Hey guys, back again with another Fahrenheit 451 mini lesson. This one is on part 4, which is pages 21 through 28. So let's go ahead and get started like we always do with some new vocabulary. There's some good words in this section. So the first one's capillary, and it's used in the book. Light flickered on bits of ruby glass and on sensitive capillary hairs in the nylon brush nostrils of the creature that quivered gently, 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 its 8 legs spidered under it on rubber padded paws. So we're talking about the mechanical hound here. The capillary, so a capillary can be like a really small vein in your body. It also can refer to like a hair thin tube. It's like a really, really tiny tube. So kind of like the picture here. So think of like whiskers. It's the mechanical hound's whiskers is what he's referring to as like the capillary hairs. The next word is proboscis. So gripped in gentling paws, while a 4-inch hollow steel needle plunged down from the proboscis of the hound to inject massive jolts of morphine or procaine. So this mechanical hound is kind of scary. It hunts people down, and then a needle comes out of its like snout to inject a lethal dose of morphine to kill the victim, or it's like target. So an easy way to remember proboscis is to remember proboscis monkeys, which is the picture here. I have those giant noses. So a proboscis isn't just necessarily a nose, but it can be like a snout, like an elephant's trunk. So just think of the hound as like a dog that has a long snout, and out of that long snout comes a needle that can kill people. Our next word, incinerator. So the pawn was then tossed in the incinerator. So this is like a way of getting rid of refuse, trash, things like that. Sometimes big buildings will have an incinerator for trash. It's really common back east if you live in like a tall building that there's like a trash chute that goes down to the incinerator. It's just a big oven to burn trash. Okay, our next word is ballistics. So it's like a lesson in ballistics. So that's just the study of like gunshots, how they work, that kind of like just the trajectory of things. Speaking of trajectory, so that's our next word, trajectory. And BD again is talking about the hound and how it only goes where they tell it to go. It has a trajectory, we decide for it. It follows through, it targets itself, homes itself, and cuts off. So think of a trajectory like if you throw a ball, you're sending that ball on a trajectory. You're sending it to a specific part that you're trying to get it to. So in terms of the mechanical hound, they like type in who it's going after, and then it only goes after that. It's on a trajectory to get that one person. Okay, moving on to literary elements. So the one we're going to focus on right now is indirect characterization. So this is the process by which the writer shows the character's personality through speech, actions, and appearance. So especially when we're talking Ray Bradbury, he is like the master of indirect characterization, indirect action, indirect, pretty much everything. Nothing is ever explicitly stated, which can make his books a little frustrating to read. But on the flip side, you get to inject a lot of your own imagination and inference into it. So kind of just run with it. So indirect characterization, there's ways that you can do this. So the first one is you can reveal characters via dialogue, the things they're saying, not only that, but how they're saying them, who they're saying them to. Physical details and gestures. They remember when he describes Montag in the very first section as stolid. Like we get this impression he's this very serious firefighter that is very like, masculine and doesn't get bothered by things. Bradbury never explicitly says that. He just says he's stolid and like this big tough firefighter. You can describe people via the environment they live in. So think of Mildred, who lives basically in her TV room. That says a lot about her character. Or their actions. So how does a character's actions show their motivations, their focus, their priorities? Why are they doing the things that they're doing, right? And then finally, the effect they have on others. So that's especially when we think of characters like Clarice, that her whole purpose in this book is to act as a catalyst for Montag, right? Like we aren't seeing anything from her perspective. It's all from Montag's perspective. So consider her role and how she's characterized through the way that she interacts with Montag, what is her purpose based on that? So here's a really great example. This is a conversation in this section between Captain Beatty and Montag. And it is really revealing as far as kind of the way that they think of things, the way that they're handling the situation they're in, the society they live in, like what roles they play. So we'll just go ahead and read this really quick. The captain came over to the drop hole and gave Montag a questioning glance. I was just figuring, said Montag, what does the hound think about down there nights? Is it coming alive on us? Really? It makes me cold. It doesn't think anything we don't want it to think. That's sad, said Montag quietly, because all we put into it is hunting and finding and killing. What a shame if that's all it can ever know. Beatty snorted gently. Hell, it's a fine bit of craftsmanship, a good rifle that can fetch its own target and guarantees the bullseye every time. That's why, said Montag, I wouldn't want to be its next victim. Why, you got a guilty conscience about something? Montag glanced up swiftly. Beatty stood there looking at him steadily with his eyes, while his mouth opened and began to laugh very softly. So, super revealing little set of dialogue here. So Montag is very humanizing towards the hound, right? Like he kind of thinks like, oh, it's so sad. Like his whole life is just killing and hunting, you know? And Beatty's like, it's a machine. Like, stop, you know? He views it as a purely pragmatic, it's a tool, it's not alive, it's not something to be empathized with. Whereas Montag is empathizing with it and he is humanizing it. And then Montag's kind of flips his hand a little bit here and shows that he, maybe has something to worry about. And that makes Beatty kind of suspect that maybe Montag isn't being fully forthcoming about what he might have in his house, which we know to be books. But it just shows that they are two very different characters, that Montag is thinking in a society where thinking is not a thing that people do. People in this society, they have their role, they fulfill that role, they do what they're supposed to do, and that's it, right? Clarice has expounded upon this at length, talking about how in their society, they get in trouble for thinking and talking and going on walks and things like that. Whereas people who just kind of zip through life, do what they need to do, and don't think too much are the preferred approach. So it's not only is this conversation showing this contrast between Montag and Beatty, but it's also showing us the effect Clarice is starting to have. Saying like, oh, it's such a shame that the machine can only know hunting and killing is a very Clarice thing to say, right? But Montag is the one saying it. At the beginning of the book, Montag might not have felt that way, right? He would have been like, nope, it's tool, we're firemen, we burn houses, that's what we do. And now he's kind of like, oh, well. So this is a perfect example of the impact that Clarice is having on just his approach to life, his thinking process. So when you're thinking about indirect characterization, consider how, kind of like I just talked about, how that dialogue, not just between Montag and Captain Beatty, but all of the characters, can reveal so much about their characters. And then how is Bradbury building their characters implicitly? So remember the difference between implicit and explicit. I think we covered that in section 2. Implicit is kind of like implied, like it's never said like straight out. It's just kind of like, here's the breadcrumbs, you need to follow the trail and figure it out yourself. Explicitly would be when he just states, Montag has started thinking and started questioning things, and Beatty is looking at the hound as a tool. He never says that. He's never like explicitly stating this is what it is. So indirect characterization is really common in literature because it's more interesting to show than to tell about a character or anything. But especially in this book, think about each character has a very specific role they play. So consider those roles and how they might be interacting with each other. So our last part, just to quickly recap what this section was about. So Bradbury describes the mechanical hound in detail. It's a robot that is capable of hunting down these fugitives and killing them. I'm going to, in the Google Classroom, I'm linking a clip from Black Mirror called Metalhead. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's super stressful, but it's basically this mechanical dog that's hunting this lady down because she like stole something from this warehouse. But I'm linking that in the Google Classroom just to give you some like visual context if you can't picture what this hound kind of looks like. So Montag always has like this very like, he's very intrigued by the machine, right? But when he tries to touch it, he like puts his hand out and it kind of like snarls at him. He's like, ah, you know, it's aggressive towards him. And he's like, that's weird. He goes to Beatty and he's like, you know, I think the hound might be after me. I don't think it, you know, and Beatty's kind of like, you're being ridiculous. It's programmed. They have to give it like a person's DNA for the hound to be able to hunt them down. So he's like, unless somebody gave the hound your DNA, you have nothing to worry about. And Montag says, you know, like we just saw in the dialogue excerpt we looked at, that he doesn't want to be the next victim, which kind of makes Beatty suspicious. Like, why wouldn't you? Do you have something to be a victim about? And Montag's, of course, like, no, everything's cool. And that's where their conversation ends. Montag then is seeing Clarice around the neighborhood frequently. They have a lot of like very deep conversations. And then Clarice kind of goes on at length about the society that they live in as far as like the youth culture. She's like, you know, kids kill each other all the time. 6 of my friends were shot in the last year. Like, it seems like a very violent society, especially among the younger people. They're very aggressive towards each other, very violent. They go to like smashing places where they can break things. And it seems like because people don't talk about their feelings and talk out, you know, where they are, youth who are still navigating, like your guys' age, who are still navigating all those complex feelings that come with that early adulthood, have nothing to do but just take out that aggression on things and each other. And then Clarice just kind of sums up her musings, focusing, pointing out that the people in our society are just very shallow. And they're very focused on kind of like silly, unimportant things. Think of Mildred. Mildred's kind of the poster child for what people in this world are like. Oh, I'm going to watch TV and I'm going to talk to my friends and da-da-da-da-da, right? Like, it's very surface level. So it seems like in this society that Clarice and now kind of Montag are becoming a little bit of an outlier. They're not the norm. And so that's where this section concludes. It's just Clarice kind of saying, like, you know, there's more important things than the next TV show that's on. So keep that in mind, and I will see you guys for section 5. Bye.